Welcome back to Falcon Update on MC77. I'm Charmaine Lim, and I'm joined by the new student body president-elect Tetsuo Takahara and vice president-elect Jordan Sponsler for a special town hall. If you have any questions, feel free to email them or post them on our social media platforms throughout the show. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Doing well. We just came from interviews for the rest of the cabinet positions, so it's
fun.
been we're hitting the ground running this week.
Okay.
Yeah, first of the interviews. We got a few more planned throughout this week.
Okay, that's cool. So what has it been like for you guys since winning?
Just kind of like it's hit where like how much needs to be done in order to prepare for next year. A lot of like logistic work, a lot of meeting with administrators, a lot of kind of laying foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting to get started with the whole shadowing process and transition, spending a lot of time talking with Todd and Marianne respectively, getting to know more about just what to expect, what will be expected of us. And yeah, like as Jordan mentioned, we are very excited to start interviewing candidates for cabinet this week, and excited for me at least over the summer to be working here over on campus in the SGA office with Kevin and just learn the ropes and prepare for next year.
Have you guys had a chance to shadow and Todd Marianne a little?
Yeah, we managed to sit in on one of their cabinet meetings, and there will be other whenever if we are able to make it sort of meetings that involve their cabinet or with different councils, committees, leadership stuff that if and when possible.
What's it been like to shadow them?
It's been really fun to get an inside look, just the kind of behind the scenes of just like how SGA operates and how this cabinet works together. And it's fun because you can definitely see the way that they play off of each other, they play off each other's strengths, and they come and work together. And that's definitely something we want to emulate and model our cabinet after next year, is just kind of playing off each other's strengths. But then they really come together and work together. And so it's been really, really neat to see how that works.
And I think a lot of it is also just anticipating certain unknowns that you just won't be able to find out until you start next year. Even if we're doing our best to choose the best candidates that we think will fit cabinet positions, but how we will really come together and grow as a team is something that it's part of the process that we just have to look forward to.
Okay, so kind of stepping away from the beginning process of it, you guys talk a lot about diversity, it's your slogan and all that, but what does it mean to you guys outside of your slogan?
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is my home country, Malaysia, and just the different people, groups, ethnicities that are represented there, how we as a nation respect and acknowledge and celebrate the different cultures and traditions that you can find in that country, but at the same time still be able to find a strong sense of identity under the Malaysian nationality. I think a lot of those values are what I bring with me coming here and coming into this role. That would be the first thing that comes to mind outside of our slogan and stuff, and I think a lot of that has driven the desire to want to bring that to SGA.
And so a lot of what diversity means to me, and what I think of outside of SGA, is kind of breaking down homogenous circles and prompting people to step outside their comfort zone and to go interact with people who come from a different background. Critically analyzing who are the people you spend all your time around, who are the people in authority in your life, who are the people you go to when something's wrong. Kind of figuring out, thinking through, where do all these people come from, and do they come from similar places as you, or are they providing new and alternate perspectives that you wouldn't be able to have access to otherwise.
And you guys have touched on this a lot throughout, campaigning and on the debate night. But what does it mean? What does it actually mean for Messiah to be diverse?
So I think there's two levels. And maybe this might be a generalization, but especially in America, where there's a lot of talk about race, and then how do we distinguish between race and ethnicity, and then where does diversity fit in there? So I think just politically, socially, as constructs, created by human beings, we tend to focus on race and the different race assumptions, stereotypes, and whatnot associated on race based on skin color or appearance a lot, and that's created a lot of tension. But underneath that, I feel like there's a diversity that is waiting to be tapped into. And while like ethnic diversity and differences are super important because where you come from, how your culture and traditions inform you as a human being, you know, they play a huge role in forming your identity, and ethnicity is a big part in that. But at the same time, like getting to know people here, making friends of, you know, different races of local, like the white Americans, or even, you know, the students of minority who are American. You know, their views are so different because of ethnicity, but then when you really strip all of that down, and this is not to whitewash or kind of like negate the importance of ethnic diversity, but everyone has a story that people, you wouldn't know unless you start talking to them, unless you start having conversations, unless you start like fellowshipping, you know, and like being in a Christian campus, I feel like that's something that we don't utilize as much in the spirit of getting to know our neighbor, in loving one another in that way. And you know, like my past years in RA, I've learned so much from my residents who are from the area, who have been in Pennsylvania their whole life, and they've shared their stories and testimonies with me that I would never have been able to know just from looking the way they look, or assuming from just their appearance or race. So diversity is acknowledging then that those experiences, acknowledging the ethnicity that drives those experiences, the history associated with the ethnicity, as well as personal experiences from environment and nurture, and then just coming face to face and say, like, you know, you are a beloved human being and child of God.
Yeah, and all that and more, like, and just to add to that, just coming into each conversation and interaction with a spirit of wanting to learn, with a mentality of you are a unique person, and you have individual experiences that are different than mine, and how can I learn from you? And so there's a humility that comes with that kind of that mentality, and that's a lot of the mentality that we'd like to try and help propagate on campus.
And you guys have talked a lot about, you know, diversity in conversation, making the time to understand other people, but what would that actually look like on campus? Like, is it getting people to talk to someone they wouldn't usually talk to? Is it bringing more diverse culture from other countries to campus? Like, what does it actually mean for the campus to actually be more diverse?
That's a really good question. It's important to acknowledge that there's the institutional administrative level that we can inform and influence to a certain degree, because SJ is part of that bridge. And I know that President Phipps is doing her best to really push for diversity in its own right. As for the student level, I think first and foremost it starts with us, SGA, and all the other student leaders out there, in the way we carry ourselves and approach those conversations. You know, what good would it be to talk about diversity and organize events if we aren't spending time with the people, getting to know them? And I think, like, we mentioned this during the debate night as well, but one of the most important things I feel that comes with this role is the power it then gives the voices, to the voices of those who aren't necessarily in the role of being heard. To be able to represent, for example, myself, not only the international community or the Malaysian community or the ethnically Chinese community, but also the minority community. But like I mentioned, the stories of my residents who are local, who are American, and who are white, those are stories that I carry with me now as well. And I think a lot of it starts from us making sure that we are held accountable and walking that walk. But at the same time, we definitely want to look at it integrationally. How then can we supplement the way we are behaving and our attitude seeping into the events we organize, and looking for club collaboration, you know, exploring different avenues for collaboration between two clubs that on surface might have no reason to have anything to do with one another.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
No, you're good. You got good ideas.
But those ideas are from a lot of people we've talked to as
Yeah.
well. It's not just our own.
Yeah.
Definitely. And just kind of moving, like going off of that as well, a lot of what we really want to try and do is make SGA an accessible organization. And through social media, through the idea of these town halls that we'd really like to try and institute, we want to help students recognize that they have a voice and they can be heard, and they don't have to be an executive position in a club in order to be heard. Yeah.
And okay, you guys have like brought up a lot of student leadership and stuff like that. And like, are you trying to introduce more diverse voices into leadership, into SGA? Like, is that something you guys are consciously trying to do, especially with cabinet interviews right now?
Yeah, definitely. So we've definitely kept or are keeping in mind the demographics of the student body, but then also the different perspectives that each of our applicants bring to the table. And of course, we can only work with so much because we can only choose our cabinet from those who've applied. And
right.
so if you haven't applied, then we can't. There's not much we can do there. But we are moving forward with that in mind, and trying to do the best of our ability to kind of integrate those perspectives into the cabinet.
And in terms of the larger student leadership population, I think coming back to being on the ground and interacting with the students and making sure we're being intentional with our connections, I think through those connections, it is well within our role to be recommending students, encouraging students who are looking for things or avenues for them to serve. You know, like connecting with the freshmen, sophomores who maybe are looking for more than just club activities in terms of how they can serve their community and get involved. I know, like for myself personally, getting to know like JC last year when I came in, her encouragement in terms of myself joining student senate and all that helped a lot in just saying like, oh, there are these avenues, there are these opportunities beyond you know, different clubs. And so I think that will also have a large like role in playing in terms of recommending diversity within student leadership while balancing out merit and quality.
And of these people who are applying, like, how do you guys deem who is a diverse voice for the student body? Like, how do you make that decision?
With a lot of prayer. And so I think it's important to acknowledge, one, there was the gender question that came up. And so Jordan and I are particularly sensitive to that. When we first came together, we recognized that we were two males. But as we also said during the debate, you know, you're going to have a cabinet that's comprising of 5 other people and a total of 7. So I think that's where we can showcase that SGA is committed to diversity. And while the title says president and vice president, I personally view it as a team working together with each person playing an integral role. So like Jordan mentioned, we can only choose from a pool of applicants, but asking applicants how they feel about the platform, how do they feel about diversity, similar to some of the questions you're asking us here tonight. Some of them we know personally, and that helps in terms of the personal conversations we've had regarding these topics and their ideas on how they can help contribute to SGA. I think a lot of those factors will help us make a decision. And you know, because we don't want to just do like, we don't want it to come across in any way that this person was elected as a token. You know, because that's, unfortunately, that happens a lot in the real world. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We will have more questions after the break, so stay tuned and come back.
I'm Lily. I am a junior, and I am a broadcasting and media production major at Messiah College. I chose to be a broadcasting and media production major because as a little girl, I dreamt of being a TV anchor. There are so many opportunities you can have as a broadcasting major. Messiah is really unique in the fact that we have our own TV station, and it's student-led, so each week we have Falcon Update, which is a half hour, and then we have MC Live, which is a half hour as well. My favorite part is just being in the hustle and bustle of everything, and I'm really excited to just be creative when I'm putting together news packages or shooting other stories, just really getting every element of storytelling in my work. So we have a lot of faith-based projects. Right now we're working on one, it's called Faith Sides for multimedia storytelling. In pairs we're interviewing each other for 2 minutes about some aspect of faith. A lot of students from our major either intern at ABC77 or WGAL. I shadowed one of my professors at a Hershey Bears game. The Bears are a local AHL hockey team, and through that experience I developed connections, and eventually I got a job there. So I run the Crossfire machine and the LEDs on game days. My freshman year at Messiah, when I first came, I knew absolutely nothing about broadcasting or media, and now I feel confident that I can go work at a TV news station.
And we are back with our president and vice president-elect for next year. As a reminder, if you guys have any questions, please leave them on our social media or you can email them to us. So how do you guys think you are going to be able to introduce diversity as to men in leadership, especially for communities who are female, who are part of the LGBTQ community, who are not white or not Asian?
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll take it. So as we mentioned before, a lot of this will come through who we elect as our cabinet. But then a lot of introducing new perspectives comes from taking a step down and just being willing to listen and to hear what people have to say. And also giving them the opportunity to have their voice be heard through you. And then ideally, if we can institute this town hall, we can have opportunities for students to have their voice be heard on their own, because every student here has a voice. It's our job to listen. And so a lot of the diversity that we want to incorporate and the perspectives we want to incorporate into our vision and what we do in SGA is going to come from a lot of those one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's definitely a lot. We will just have to do a lot of our due diligence in educating ourselves in the areas that we're not as experienced in, or you know, being a voice for those students. But like Jordan said, importantly, making sure that those students then can also be their own advocates. Ideally, this will be something that it's like the culture that will be created will be like, not to say, well, hopefully self-sustaining, but like, you know, it will touch the people in a way that they'll be able to say, yeah, you know, my perspective should be heard, but so should yours. But I think Jordan and I have a lot of responsibility in keeping up to date, having those connections. Yeah. And I'm glad to be able to say that whenever I've had a question or I found myself not too familiar with certain things like the LGBTQ conversation or the perspective of what it is like to be a female or a female of color, you know, there's so many different. I'm glad that I do have friends that I can then say, hey, you know, what are your thoughts? What are your experiences? You know, I'd like to know more.
Yeah, because going along with that, we want to be held accountable. We want to be kept in check and made sure that we're doing a good job of representing these students and these minorities and these demographics on campus. We're passionate about this and we want to do it right. And we know that means we know we'll mess up, but we want to ask the student body to help keep us in check and to help us grow and help us learn and help us do the best we can as we serve them.
And if you have, you know, people who are that you guys talk to personally that are, you know, great in one-on-one conversation, and you'd like them to be a spokesperson, but they're scared because of discrimination they face, whether on campus or outside of campus, how do you plan to, would you like to incorporate those voices if they fear discrimination because they speak up because of differences?
I think then it's how we decide to weave those experiences into the intentional events or conversations we have. And this could be done on a public student body level, like certain events like civil discourse, or the people we bring in to speak as panelists or guest speakers to give their perspective that are in line with some of those friends who are afraid, but, you know, coming with a place of moral authority or age. Or also the way we bring these discussions and topics up to like the board of trustees or interacting with the higher level administration, you know, so that while we may not be able to make immediate changes on the ground, just the fact that, you know, the administrative higher ups are aware and that, you know, these things are issues that occur for a lot of people, so that they may in the future reflect on policy, just student handbook rules and stuff like that. I think there are multiple ways to kind of like tackle the problem.
Yeah, definitely. 'Cause I don't think it's just as simple as, even though we are very passionate about these types of topics and talking about these things on campus, we also recognize that we're not always the best people to be talking. And sometimes we need to just sit down and find someone else who's more educated, who shares that same perspective that it needs to be shared. And let them speak. And so if a student is scared because of what discrimination they might face, that might be a legitimate fear. And we want to do what we can to help support them and make them feel strong enough to go out and speak.
And we've, you know, talked a lot about the LGBTQ community specifically. I know that one of the things you guys referenced during debate night was that you want to make this a more open and campus, a safer campus for them. But what does that look like to you? How are you going to make this a campus that's more accepting and safer for members of those community, some of whom have faced discrimination, such as having people report on them simply because of their sexuality?
I think addressing the way now this is going to be some interesting waters that we wade through here, but on like a theological or ideological level, we may have our beliefs on what is right and wrong, but I think people often forget that it is not our place to judge regardless. And I have spoken about this. I've asked some of my friends who are part of this community, like in my own quest to be, like, how do I be a good ally? How do I still love you as a friend? And the most common thing that they tell me is like, okay, we understand that you may not agree with whether it is right or wrong, but, you know, just hearing me and acknowledging me and accepting me as a person and loving me as your friend, you know, and saying like, that's how I'm going to stand by you. I think that's the most important thing that's often overlooked because people immediately jump to the, oh, that's right or wrong, or like, you know, they try to make it a legal issue, or they try to make it so many different issues, but then we forget that, you know, especially on a Christian campus, which I find sometimes ironic, we are called to love, first and foremost. And, you know, why judge someone else when some of the other sins that you might be committing is just as wrong in God's eyes? Like, if, you know, if we're all sinners in God's eyes, then, like, who are we to say what is right or wrong when, or try to even, like, make one sin worse than the other? So I think it's having these type of conversations, not like a top-down what is right or wrong, black or white approach, but rather saying like, hey, you know, you're missing out a lot on these aspects of the conversation. And if you were to stop and consider, then you would be not so quick to discriminate or report. You know, if you started having conversations with people who've had those experiences, if you started making friends with people from the LGBTQ plus community, then you wouldn't be so quick to dehumanize them and say like, no, what you're doing is wrong. And I think a lot of that would come from just more education, training for faculty and staff, panels, discussions. I think there was a chapel series like a year ago that really talked about a lot of these, and it was very well received. It also had a lot of mixed reviews.
Right.
But still, that just meant that that was getting the conversation going. And I think it starts from there to create a culture of acceptance and civil dignity.
Yeah, and I think first, like I love what you touched on. First and foremost, it's making sure to see everyone as human first, and recognizing that we are all human and we're all here, and we have to coexist together. And there's beauty in our differences. And there's a lot we can learn from each other. I think a lot of it comes down to also just like our conceptions of what is normal and like the jokes we say, the language we use. I think it'd be great if we could normalize conversation and education about gender identity. Like that's something that I haven't really been exposed to until I've sought to like learn and teach myself. And I think that's saying something if that's not really taught in the public education system.
Right. Yeah. And okay, like stepping back from this topic a little bit,
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of voices and representation already, but something that I'm aware of is that the presidents of the subgroups of MCC are not currently on SGA Primary Forum. And is that something you guys are looking to introduce in the future when you step into leadership next year?
So there has been steps already. For example, they have had so MCC have gotten their votes back in terms of the extended forum, and each of the 5 clubs under MCC now have the power to vote, despite falling under the umbrella of just one MCC. And we felt that Senate felt that it was important because they do represent different groups on campus that should have a say in voting in terms of student senate. As to primary forum, I think that's a great discussion to have. To be honest, we have not given it thought until now, and I'm actually really glad that it was brought up. So that's something to think about also in the future. It might be tricky just because like the budget and money goes through MCC, and so that's kind of like how the executive clubs are divided and categorized in Senate. But that's definitely a conversation I'd be willing to have.
Yeah. We will have more questions after the break, so don't go anywhere.
Oh, hi. I suppose you're wondering what an A-list celebrity like me is doing in a place like this. You must know, I'm saving the world. Oh, hi, Beth. Yep, saving the world again. Did you know that 40% of all the food produced in the United States is thrown away? That means everything that went into that food, the pesticides, the water, the land, was all for nothing. Just look at this perfectly good food thrown in the trash. The pizza with extra Cheerios, these goldfish and Band-Aid tacos. And just look at this perfect trash burger. This pasta dog looks delicious.
You don't have to dumpster dive like Ed Begley Jr. to save the planet. Fight food waste by shopping smart and using what you buy before it gets trashed.
That's way better. Ooh, arugula.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.
Adventure education is defined as the use of adventurous activities as a catalyst for personal and interpersonal growth. It's as much about the education as it is about the adventure. Within our program here, you definitely learn the leadership, and so together you get the complete package of not just the technical skills, but how to utilize and design those adventure experiences to help groups reach their goals.
Well, as an adventure ed major, you have to take certain outdoor activities courses. So you have the options of doing rock climbing, you could do canoeing, you can do caving, and learning all these cool activities that you could never do sitting in a classroom. It's definitely what makes this program awesome.
And we are back with Jordan and Tet. So we've been talking a lot about diversity, but what about the people who don't care about diversity? What about the people who think that Messiah is diverse enough? What do you, like, how are you going to serve them?
Like answering the question of how do you get someone to care about something when they don't?
I mean, yes, in a sense, but what about the people who just don't care because they think that Messiah is diverse enough? I mean, we have an international student population. It's 3.4% of the population. We have a multicultural population. It's about 10.5%. And some people would say that's enough for a college this size when you think about numbers. How are you going to serve the people who think that diversity is already a topic that's been addressed on campus, especially when your campaign is about diversity?
I guess my question then would be, why do you think that there needs to be a limit to like the number of voices on campus? Like, why do you need to think that there's need to be a limit to the variety of perspectives? Like, yes, you might have, so you have 3.4, you said 3.4% of the student population. Like, why does that, when we talk about enough and too much, these are all people that are that are bringing their individual stories, and so when you have more stories that are coming from outside of your group and your location that you come from, that's more variety, and that's more that's different perspectives that you can then grow and learn from.
And yeah, like that's, you know, people hear that and they've taken it into consideration. Your platform has been a lot about this, but how do you serve them if they don't care about this? You're not going to force your opinion on them, but how are you going to serve them? Like, what is it that you can do for these people who aren't trying to lobby for more diversity?
So I think that's why underneath that diversity, we also talked about inclusivity and reconciliation. And that's why Jordan and I felt it was important to have like tangible short-term things we could accomplish in our 9 to 10 months of actual term time. And you know, diversity is a broad topic, but it's important then to say like, yes, we've got all this diversity, what do we do with it? How do we make sure that people aren't marginalized? And some, like, it doesn't always have to be about ethnicity. Like I mentioned before, there are groups of people and students that sometimes exist in their own little bubble that also are at risk of being marginalized. So like during our campaign, we talked about diversity, but at the same time, here are some things we would like to do that focus on inclusivity and reconciling the fact that some people have been left
Right.
in the fringes. We talked about the community students. Not all the community students are students of color or international students
Right.
and whatnot, but they too can find coming to a campus that is so focused on dorm living and stuff like that to be hard to integrate themselves as part of the community, especially when they're not given access to dorm and like res halls during visitation hours.
Right.
We talked about students in the High Center, Climate Haga. A lot of the students who've heard about like our hopes to introduce some sort of food and drink option in the building have come up and said like, that's a really great idea. It's so hard to have to walk all the way to Falcon or the Union. A lot of them opt to just not eat because like that 5-10 minute gap they have in between their schedules just isn't worth it, so on and so forth. So I think that's one way to serve. Coming back to like diversity on the cabinet and relating to how we can serve students, who don't care. Like there may be applicants or there may be cabinet members who are white or who may have come from a place that previously they said, I didn't have much exposure to ethnic or racial diversity, but through my exposure, through my journey and getting to know friends of different places, I've come to see like it is important. And I think having those people then speak back into the community saying there is a reason to care is really important.
Right, but you're kind of focusing on the fact that it comes back to diversity and
Sure.
like just pulling from example, creating the Dining Dollars network where people can swipe for other people. That's something that doesn't stand on diversity or anything or inclusivity. It's just kind of a resource for everyone. You guys have talked about a little bit of that with like an app, but outside of an app, how, like, aside from an app and meal options, how do you plan to serve people on a platform that doesn't have to stand on diversity?
I think coming back to the town hall, a platform for students to come and voice their concerns, I think a lot of it also will come into our interactions with the students, constantly being diligent in terms of gathering feedback. Serving from the ground up means that we're constantly having our ears out for good ideas, opinions of students, and I think a continuous gathering of that and then seeing what we can do with the time given to us would be our best way to serve the students.
Because the students there's so much untapped potential within the student body for ideas. And so we really want to tap into that and listen and hear.
And like, you guys talked about this during debate night about fostering an environment for communication and for conversation. Some people could say it was like kind of a buzzword of yours, fostering communication. What happens when you have conversation and communication, but that's not enough to do what you want? What happens when fostering conversation isn't effective in the way that you want it to be? What then?
Do you think it wouldn't be effective?
I mean, communication can be roundabout. You can be in an echo chamber. It doesn't have to be with people who are going to change your mind. Conversation can just be conversation. Communication can go in one ear and out the other. Doesn't mean it's going to change anything. So what happens if it doesn't?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to when people adjust their mentality or change their mind. It doesn't normally come from just one conversation or one interaction with someone and they say like, oh, I've got it now. I understand. It comes from repeated interactions, repeated conversations, repeated exposures to why this is important. Like why, oh, you think differently than I do. Okay, let me learn. Oh, I don't agree with you. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, then you go off and do your own thing. But then if you hear that again and again, like, oh, maybe there's something here. And I think consistency is going to be a big part.
And I think it's important that, of course, Jordan and I acknowledge that it's not all going to be roses and daisies, and it's not going to be like a snap of a finger that everyone's into the conversation or buying into the reasons that we need to talk about these things, but to have faith in that from whatever interaction that they do have and the conversations they have or hear, sure, it might go out, you know, the other ear one day, but I like to believe that it stays there. You know, it's kind of like a seed, and you never know when it's going to grow, when it's going to click. But, you know, what then, we can't just not do anything with the time we have. And so whoever, if we touch the people who are already looking to seek for something more and, you know, introduce them to the conversation that's already happening, that's great. You know, and if we set a small little spark in someone so that they can join into the conversation at another point in their lives, I think that's also great.
We will have a couple more questions when we get back, so don't go anywhere.
And now, a public service announcement from Messiah College Athletics.
Colin, did you see Bender's sweet goal at the soccer game last night?
No, dude, I didn't.
Ah, no worries. Go Messiah.com. It's right here.
Oh, sweet. The highlight of the night, man. Must have been a sweet goal.
Yeah.
Satchel, player of the week? Congrats.
Wait, what?
Just go Messiah.com it.
Look at that. GoMessiah.com.
Hey, Coach Good. Oh, hey, Steph. Have you seen your pictures from the game last night?
No, I haven't.
No worries. Go Messiah.com it.
All right. Oh, wow. These are great. Oh, and there's one of me.
See more photos of Brooke Good and check out stats, recaps, and highlights of your favorite Falcon teams on GoMessiah.com. Don't forget to follow the Falcons on social media.
It absolutely changed my life. We got to use sports to glorify God, and it was awesome to be able to use our talents in that way. And on top of that, I also got to find more about my identity in Christ and my personal calling. And that was actually through the missionaries there who are alumni of Messiah. They talked to me about their need for accountants, which is my major. And so I've actually been able to use those gifts in a way I never thought was possible through missions and in Panama, a completely different country. So it was awesome.
Welcome back to our town hall with Ted and Jordan. We just have a couple more questions to wrap up the show, and we'll be done for the night. Just, you know, kind of talking about the wider student body again. You guys have talked about an app. How are you going to fund an app?
That is a very good question. Jordan and I initially contemplated using the capital purchase money. So for those who are asking themselves now, what is this? It's basically all the money that gets left over from the clubs and whatnot that aren't used at the end of the year. So it's actually coming up in spring. We won't be putting in a proposal for this year because we need to get more information in terms of what kind of options we want to explore. Should we get a third-party vendor? That would cost like the most. But then also just look at how much would it be possible for there to be like a collab project of sorts where students and faculty can work together to make this a reality. I think it would be pretty cool for the IT department to take on this project, but we know a lot more discussions need to be had in terms of the feasibility. Who knows?
Yeah, and we know that we have a lot of really great computer science students on campus. We have a lot, like we said before, we have a lot of untapped potential, and so we've already been actually contacted by a student who expressed interest in helping develop the app. And so we were kind of wondering, what if we kind of followed that trail a little bit further and open this up to students and be like, hey, if you come and partner with us and partner with IT and like work to create an app, maybe there's some way we could use that capital purchase money to provide a financial incentive for a student on campus to help with the app.
Yeah. And this is going to be a really quick question because I don't know if you've like solidly nailed down anything for the app yet, but what are the benefits of the app that you can't get from just being on Falcon Link on your phone?
Immediate access. I feel like that's a big thing.
Fair.
Immediate access and having everything in one place, that's quick and easy to get to, where you can have your Lottie menu, check your chapel credits, pay your bill, everything that you have on Falcon Link, just having it right there, one tap away.
And I think just being able to like get notifications on the app that like have to do with like club activities versus like getting rid of all the mass emails that constantly knock on our door every morning.
Right.
And so that emails would then have significance of like, this is an actual important thing, please notice me. That's the biggest thing I think about of the app. Everything Jordan said is valid and true and definitely would be great. I think there's a huge difference between using an app and using the web browser. So,
yeah.
And some people would say that you guys have really lofty ambitions with wanting to create an app and include diversity and all these things. Do you think you're going to be able to get it done in a year, realistically?
Get it done? No. I think it's an ongoing process. It's not something, these aren't things that you just finish and you get to the mountaintop and you say, okay, I'm here and we're done. No. These are ongoing processes. We've inherited a legacy of leaders from previous generations here at Messiah, and we have a box that we're working within right now. And so we want to keep the ball rolling, and we got to roll it in the right direction. But it's going to be setting a precedent for those who come after us too, to pick up what we've started, or what we've continued to work on.
But that doesn't mean we aren't going to try our best to, as I mentioned, impact the people we can during the time we have, and continue to build upon the base that has been built before us, and continue pushing Messiah into the right direction.
I like that. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for tonight. A big thank you to Ted and Jordan for coming out onto the show. After the break, we will have campus calendar and de-stress. Stay tuned.
Can I give you a hand?
You talk to. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
United Way fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. Will you?
Spring break is over and March is coming to an end. To keep you motivated through the second half of the semester, we have a whole new list of activities for you. The classics are known for being boring, but Ellen Montgomery has changed that by writing her modern classic, Anne of Green Gables. Adopted by the Cuthbert siblings, Anne Shirley moves to Green Gables in Avonlea. There, she finds a family, a best friend, and a place for her imagination to grow. With her fiery personality and a talent for storytelling, Anne's adventures in Avonlea bring laughter and life lessons to her neighbors. We all know Kesha from her days as an early pop idol, but time can change, and Kesha is one of the artists who has written music from painful experiences. Written after her lawsuit against Dr. Luke for sexual assault and emotional abuse, Praying packs an emotional punch. Kesha steps away from her early pop music to deliver this powerful song, featuring lyrics that were inspired by suicidal thoughts that she had from the past, intended to inspire other survivors of abuse. Kesha's voice and music combine as a powerful anthem for people everywhere. Most people grew up watching this show, but if you haven't seen Gilmore Girls, you're in for a treat. Lorelai and Rory Gilmore are known for being some of the strongest women in television drama. With their brains, sass, and sarcasm, there is no doubt that this mother-daughter duo has been an example for young girls and women everywhere. As the strong single mother and brilliant daughter work to make a life for themselves outside of Stars Hollow, they each become examples of women who come into their own as they're faced with difficult personal decisions and life-changing opportunities. Alien woman who comes to protect Earth from other aliens? Captain Marvel marks the second female superhero in film history to have an origin movie. As the first female lead in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Captain Marvel tells the story of S.H.I.E.L.D. in its earlier days under Nick Fury. While this movie is part of the MCU canon, it does hold as a standalone, though it's recommended for you to watch the rest of the franchise to get a better grasp of the overall storyline. International Women's Day shouldn't just be one day out of the year. During your week, take the time to acknowledge the women in your life who have gotten you here. Whether that's your mom, a professor, a friend, or another female family member, they've played an important role in your life. It only takes a few minutes to thank them for what they've done and show that you appreciate them. That's all for this week's Daily De-Stressors. I'm Charmaine Lim.
We're the Village Water Ozonation System, and we're a member of the Collaboratory, which is a student-led organization on campus where students work with faculty members and advisors to serve a real-world client. Currently, we have a client in Nicaragua. We have a filtration system that purifies water using ozone. So, being a part of the Collaboratory and the IPC gives us the opportunity to serve a real client and use what we're learning in the classroom to meet this client's needs.
This is the Grantham Community Garden. We grow over 40 different crops here, all grown organically, all by students, always student-led. We're one of the most profitable student organizations on campus. Everything that we grow here we sell, and that keeps the garden going and also pays the people who work in it. And now we're trying to work our way towards being a small farm. We have more paid student workers than we've ever had before.
Because of you, I felt hopeless.
I know it was a joke, but it still hurt me.
Because of you, I felt wanted and not alone in this world.
Because you said hi to me on the first day of school, I felt included and I knew that I was going to be okay.
Hey, ready to go?
I sure am. My sleep has been great ever since I started treatment for sleep apnea.
Well, nearly 30 million adults have it, including me.
Now, let me guess. It was your snoring that gave it away?
Oh, yes, it was. Intense snoring is one of the classic signs.
Other signs include gasping for breath during sleep and daytime sleepiness. If untreated, the risk of heart disease and stroke increases.
I didn't know that, but I'm glad to hear the treatment can help.
Certainly can. To learn more about the warning signs, visit defendsleep.com.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
My text to emoji ratio has gotten a little out of hand.
A little?
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
Welcome back to MC77. Hope everyone had a good spring break. Here's this week's campus calendar. On Tuesday, March 26th from 7 to 9 p.m., there will be a lecture in Palmer Hall in the High Center titled Cultivating Interfaith Literacy, Crucial for the Common Good. Dr. George Pickens, Professor of Theology and Mission and Director of the Program in Peace and Conflict Studies, will deliver the lecture. This is part of the Office of the President's 2018-19 lecture series, and no ticket is required. In the mood for music, Chanticleer is Coming to Messiah. This two-time Grammy Award-winning ensemble has been called the world's reigning male chorus by The New Yorker and will be performing at Palmer Hall in the High Center on Friday, March 29th at 8 p.m. These 12 voices are known worldwide for their selections from a variety of musical genres. Tickets are $20 for adults, $5 for children under 18, and $5 for Messiah College students with ID, and can be purchased by calling the college ticket office at 717-691-6036 or by going to messiah.edu/tickets. Lost Films will be showing On the Basis of Sex, starring Felicity Jones. The movie focuses on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's early career and her struggles for equal rights as she works her way toward becoming a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, rated PG-13. Showings are at 6 and 9 p.m. on Friday the 29th and 3, 6, and 9 p.m. on Saturday the 30th. The film is free for Messiah students and $4 for guests. On Saturday, March 30th at 4 p.m., Samantha Adams will be having a senior flute recital in the High Foundation Recital Hall that is free and open to the public. Additionally, starting on Saturday the 30th and running through April 18th, final work from senior students in the studio art programs will be showcased in the On-Ball Art Gallery in Kleiman-Haga. There will be a reception in the gallery at 6 p.m. on the 30th. And on Sunday, March 31st at 3 p.m. in Palmer Hall in the High Center, the Messiah College Concert Choir, led by Joy Mead, will be joined by the United Voices of Praise, led by Eric Bird, and will perform their program, So Loved. The event is free and open to the public, no ticket required. That's all for this week's campus calendar. I'm Nolan Hoganboom.
Fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. Will you?